Good morning. It's Monday. Delighted to be with you, talking to you about you and your business. And on today's program, we have a lot to cover. We're going to talk about the debt crisis, the crisis that seems to never end. And we've got Dr. Antony Davies with us. He's from Duquesne University, and he's an economist there. And Dr. Davies, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Kind of give us a little bit of the overview of where America's at when it comes to this fiscal crisis.
Well, we're $17 trillion in debt, and, I've been doing interviews like this for several years, and every year this time it's $1 trillion more. So we're at 17 right now, and we're discussing whether or not to raise the debt ceiling. And what that means basically is the federal government's got a couple of credit cards in its pocket. It's maxed out one of them and is now deciding whether or not to pull out the other. And what we all know is that it's going to pull out the other. It's going to pay its bills. So the question is, how much political hay can each side make while we're negotiating this thing out?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's an interesting situation. I'll just kind of let you know where I stand at the beginning, just, so you know. In fact, I wrote a column earlier this week for Huffington Post on the subject. I support the government shutdown. I don't support allowing the debt ceiling to be ignored and defaulting. I don't support that. To me, I see them as two separate issues. The last time we let the government shut down, within a couple of years of that, we had a balanced budget. Raising awareness about fiscal problems is always a good idea, but not paying your bills, I can't ever see that as a good idea.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And the fact is, if we don't deal with this problem now, and it's a big problem, but every year we put off dealing with it, it gets worse. And we're going to have to deal with it eventually. So the question is, do you want to deal with it now when it's merely a big problem, or do you want to deal with it 5 or 10 years from now when it's a humongous problem?
Yeah, what's interesting is you talked about how it goes up about $1 trillion every year. What's interesting about it is back in the mid-1980s, I was involved with a political organization that created a coalition to try to stop the national debt from breaking $1 trillion. The national debt was on the brink of $1 trillion. This was like 84 or 85?
1 trillion.
1 trillion.
Yeah.
Now, and so think about it. You're talking about 1788 to 1984 or 85 to get to 1 trillion.
Right.
And now we are annually adding that amount.
Yeah, we're wow.
Adding
that amount each year. And the thing that's very scary is not just the debt, but the interest expense on that. The interest expense is around $500 billion a year, and that's with interest rates at historically low levels. If interest rates return to the levels that they were at, 10, 15 years ago, the interest expense would be $1 trillion a year.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if the interest rates in the Fed are being used as a political tool, because you and I know those interest rates don't reflect reality. They honestly don't reflect the reality when you look at monetary policy over the last few years, where we've had an openly inflationary monetary policy. And we haven't seen it on a lot of the large goods, but you look at basic goods, that stuff that you're buying at the grocery store, people are seeing upwards of a 25% increase in the last 4 years in the most basic goods, because those are goods that cannot absorb inflation. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've been saying this for a couple of years, that the Fed has painted itself into a corner with these low interest rates. Once it attempts to raise interest rates again to stave off the eventual inflation, it's going to come under tremendous pressure from the federal government not to raise rates, because the federal government is the single largest beneficiary in the country of the low rates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, absolutely. I mean, think about it. What if they doubled the interest rate? Just doubled it, which to me would probably not be reflection of our monetary policy. But if they did that alone, what would that do in terms of the percentage of the budget that goes just to pay the debt?
Yeah, well, to put it in perspective,
the interest on the debt. I'm sorry.
Forget about doubling it. If you were just to raise interest rates by 1 percentage point, just 1 percentage point, that would cost the federal government annually as much as the Iraq and Afghanistan wars cost combined annually.
I'm sorry to laugh, but it's kind of horrific, and of course 1% is laughable.
Right.
So do you think it's being done for political purposes? I mean, the interest rate, because, theoretically the Fed's supposed to be independent from all these elected officials. But I get the impression that it's being done, we hear in order to stimulate the economy. Well, really it's making the economy kind of sluggish and doesn't even know where its feet are, or where its floor is, rather. I don't see it having that effect at all, but I do see it creating a situation where they can continue to commit economic mayhem and pandemonium without feeling the full consequences, at least in the short term. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know that I go so far as to say it's due to political reasons, but I think very much so it's due to mathematical reasons. That is, you've got to pay the piper somehow, and either we're going to pay it through these perpetually low interest rates, or alternatively, if we're going to let interest rates rise back up again and senior citizens can start to make money off of their savings again, the cost of that is going to be a massive cut in federal spending, or alternatively, a massive increase in taxes, largely on the middle class.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, a demographic that is incredibly, I will say substantially in the pockets of the Democrats. I won't say, you know, it's not like the Jewish constituency or the black and that type of thing, but it's substantially in the pockets of the Democrats are the senior citizens. Yet the senior citizens have been hardest hit by Democratic policies, with inflationary policies on the one hand and artificially low interest rates on the other hand. They've been pounded by this.
Yeah, they have been, very much so. And you see this not just with those, but you see it with other demographic groups as well. The students are about to get seriously pounded. They're being pushed into colleges and universities now in the same way that we pushed people to take home loans back when interest rates were low.
Another bubble.
And Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were handing these things out. And what's going to happen is the student loan market is going to burst the same way the housing market did.
Yeah, do you think booms and busts are largely driven by government?
Well, I think they're a natural part of any economy, right? Because an economy is this living, breathing organism. It inhales, it exhales, you get ups, you get downs. But when a government intervenes, the ups and the downs tend to be worse than if it didn't intervene.
Right, because if there weren't other people money involved, aka taxpayers, people would respond quicker to those economic situations, correct?
Right, that's absolutely right. And when you respond, you're putting your own money on the line, not somebody else's.
Right. And so you just move more nimbly. Meanwhile, you're willing to take a risk for a longer period of time. In other words, propping up a situation, making the consequences bigger if you have this power of using other people's monies.
Yes, this is absolutely right. This is absolutely right. And this is what's led us to the current situation. And we talk about things like, well, the answer is don't build another aircraft carrier or close this military base or defund this particular program. And the fact is the problem's gotten so large that you could shut off half of the federal government and still only come close to solving the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. So philosophically, I'm a little curious as an aside, where are you typically on economics?
I tend to be staunchly free market.
I gathered that from our conversation. I've enjoyed it, by the way.
Yeah, my position is that people generally know better for themselves what's good for them than someone else does. Yeah. And so, anytime we take away our freedoms and allocate them to somebody else and say, look, you people in Washington, you make decisions for me, we're going to end up with a worse situation. Not because the people making the decisions are evil, but because they just don't have the necessary information to make the right decisions.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. In fact, the more collective it becomes, the worse the decision-making becomes.
Right, absolutely right.
That's the history of economics, I'm afraid. So are you like Chicago school free market or Austrian school free market, or?
Yeah, I tend to be. I describe myself as an Austrian orphan because I kind of came to it from a mathematical perspective, which most Austrians don't.
No. Yeah, absolutely. Math was made for Austrians because it needed mathematical legitimacy.
Right.
That's a 20th century phenomenon. Actually, the use of mathematics is like crap. They're not going to respect us unless we have numbers involved. And so, to me, the narrative work of the Austrians in the 19th century, in the early 20th century, is the best stuff.
It is the best stuff, and it's the thing that's most accessible to the general public. If you want to understand economics and you're not an economist, look at it from an Austrian perspective, and it makes perfect sense.
Just read The Road to Serfdom. You'll have it all down after that. All right, what a great guest. We're going to obviously have to get you back on again. You did a great job and very enlightening. Do you have a website you want to refer to?
I do. You can find lots of information on the economy and some videos that I've made at AntonyDavies.org.
Check it out, AntonyDavies.com. First time on The Price of Business, certainly not the last. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
All right.